Today, I'd like to show you guys something that you may already know about, and I've actually been trying to find for quite a while. This is a pair of Realistic Minimus 7s in glorious white. They're small, they're metal, they're very heavy, and are considered by some to be one of the best budget speakers for their size to come out of the 1970s and 1980s. So today, we're going to check them out. Stick around. Now, before we jump into these, I just want to thank you guys for all the nice things that you always say on my videos. When I did a little bit of emergency thrifting after the almost crisis on my last video, I happened to run across these at the Revival store in Palm Springs. Their popularity was mentioned by one of you on my Nova 7B video back in February, and since then, I've been looking for a pair. Lo and behold, a pair has appeared. So thank you, Kane26510, for mentioning these. Good call. So this is a pair of Realistic Minimus 7s in white. I normally don't like to just make declarations on this channel because this isn't a review channel. It invites disagreement, and honestly, my hearing isn't good enough to differentiate between good and bad after years of concerts anyway. But this is one case where I'm actually comfortable saying that these are worthy of all the praise that they get online. They're a lot of speaker for their tiny size, and if you find a pair of them for a good price, buy them. See you next time. Okay, of course, I'm being overly dramatic. They're not hi-fi speakers, and I am in no way claiming that they're on par with bigger, higher-end speaker systems. Like any set of speakers, they have pros and cons. What made them remarkable to me was how, unlike that one Nicolas Cage movie, there's not a whole lot of cons on this plane. The body is solid cast aluminum with a nice orange peel paint texture, and it was released in September of 1977. Though that was the original black version. They sold through to the 90s, but during that time, they went through a couple of design changes and ended up getting different branding. Later models had a slightly more angular grille on the front, a few changes to the body, and were eventually branded Optimus rather than Realistic. They also made a wood body version as well. The front grille is painted metal as well and is removable, although that's not self-evident when you first look at it. But it does just pop off. A lot of people recommended using a bent paperclip, but I have a nice set of dental picks that I found at an estate sale. Where else? And those are perfect for pulling the grille off. I found it easiest to pull from opposite corners to stop it from getting warped or bent. The little Realistic badges are just glued on, so do be careful not to knock those off. With the grille removed, you can see the 4-inch mid driver and the 1-inch dome tweeter. The bass driver is referred to as high compliance. In a nutshell, that means it takes very little force to move the speaker cone and usually is accomplished with a softer suspension, which is this rubber part and sometimes the spider suspension underneath. Now, on these, my understanding is that they wouldn't be called high compliance by modern standards. And if you press on them, which you really shouldn't do, they are pretty stiff in spite of the rubber suspension being relatively soft. The high frequency driver is a dome style tweeter. If you remember back to my Pioneer CS77A video, they used a horn style tweeter with little cells to disperse the sound more evenly across the listening space. These little dome style tweeters are meant to essentially do the same thing. They spread the sound out a little more since higher frequency sound tends to be more directional than lower frequencies. These went through a lot of different variations over their run, and some of the more obvious ones can be seen with the grille removed. The tweeter came with a metal faceplate originally, which was changed into a plastic one like this one. Also, the grille was made from aluminum on earlier models, and they changed it to steel, which is very easy to differentiate with a magnet. This one's steel, so again, these are a little bit newer, which is also obvious since the white model didn't come out until a little bit later. Also, the woofers seem to come in a few different color variations. A whitish one, a gray, and this sort of dusty rose tannish color. They were manufactured in Japan from 1977 through 1990 and in Korea from 89 to 94. The black ones debuted in 77, the silver version in 1980, and the white ones like these in 88. All the wood Minimus 7Ws were made in Korea. Another remarkable feature of these is the size of the magnets on both of the drivers. You can see as I pull the woofer out how massive that is. In fact, if I pull the tweeter out, that thing has a pretty hefty magnet as well. In fact, most of the weight is in those magnets. Now, I know the size of the magnet isn't necessarily a metric of the quality of a speaker, but I have seen a lot of cheapo speakers with tiny little magnets, so I feel like this is at least a good sign. Inside, you can see the insulation material. Again, over time, the padding that they used has changed. They started out with fiberglass. This is not fiberglass. It's some sort of polyester or other plastic material, which is good because, as I've said several times before on this channel, fiberglass is no fun to breathe. In fact, a lot of people recommend removing it and replacing it with polyfill like you would use for pillows but in this case, I can just grab it and remove it without gloves. Now that it's exposed, let's take a look at that crossover. I'll go ahead and unscrew it and pull it out so that you can see. Again, it seems like these went through a couple of iterations with respect to the layout, but essentially they consist of a single 4.7 microfarad capacitor and a 0.4 millihenry coil, which is also called an inductor or a choke. Now, I'm kind of a purist, so I try to keep things original if possible, but there are a lot of folks who have upgraded the crossover and supposedly have had fabulous results. There are several different upgrades that you can get, but every one of them looks really easy to install, and I think it's something that anybody with a screwdriver and a soldering iron can do. I checked the capacitors by desoldering them and putting them on my little part checker. They're a little bit off of their stated value and could probably do with changing, so I bought these new ones from Parts Express and hooked them up since the old ones were already disconnected. It's very easy to do, and it'll ensure that your speakers sound correct for years to come. Let's check out the back. These come with a little bracket to hang them on the wall if you don't want them on a bookshelf or on a console. I would definitely either try to find a stud or use a drywall anchor. I really think that they're too heavy to just punch a nail or screw into the drywall itself. They also sold an optional wall mount bracket. Personally, I like these. I feel like they're one of the most reliable and secure drywall anchors that I've ever used myself. They show a max power rating of 40 watts and a standard impedance of 8 ohms. Below the sticker is where the wires hook up. You just press the little button and insert the bare wire, and it holds it in place. Red is positive, black is negative. Remember to keep the polarity correct and consistent on both speakers, or it'll sound weird when you go to play them. Now, as much as I praise them, I do have a few complaints. One of them is the wire hookups. These little push button clamps are not my favorite thing in the world anyway, but these in particular aren't the most secure that I've encountered. The wires will slip right out if you don't get them deep enough, and even then, it's kind of sketchy. But I grant that it could just be this pair. I don't know if they're all like that. The second complaint is connected to the first one. When these hang on the wall, they lean against the wires and they wobble. And if the wires aren't in right, they just fall out. It would be nice if there was a little bump or some kind of feature to take the pressure off of the wires. I know that they ship with little feet that you could attach, and that would probably work, but that's only if you have them. I would probably get some little felt pads or something and mount those to the back if you're going to hang these on the wall. But that's really looking for things to gripe about. So let's talk about sound quality. How do they sound? Well, I still don't have the right setup to give you an accurate demo, but what I can say is they sound bigger than they are. But the only way that I can get that kind of rich, full sound out of them is by maxing out the bass on my amp and turning on the loudness setting, which, if you ask me, is fine. That's why we have those settings. Most speakers that I hear have a tendency to sound best when I play music that was recorded or produced around the same time as the speakers. That's actually not the case with these. Strangely, the newer and richer the recording, the better it sounds on these. I found myself really enjoying progressive metal bands like Threshold and really anything by Devin Townsend, stuff like that. That's really where they shined, especially anything that had a lot of bass. Now, the bass does fall a little short with older recordings or anything acoustic. These really need to be paired with a subwoofer. I'd even go so far as saying that not using one does these a little bit of a disservice because they're not meant to do that full range. But even without upgrading the crossover, they're crisp, they're clear, and they're certainly enjoyable to listen to. Overall, I like these a lot. I think that they're worth picking up if you ever run across a pair at a thrift store. But keep in mind, they're not super rare, and I wouldn't recommend paying more than about 20 or 30 bucks for them at the most. I say that because A, that's about what they seem to go for online minus the shipping, and B, there's a lot of them out there and you've got pretty good odds of seeing another pair eventually. I saw quite a few before they were ever mentioned to me on the channel. I just never thought to buy them. I should point out that when I bought these, they were pretty dirty and it took about 3 cups of coffee to get them clean. Wherever they had been before must have been really dusty. But yeah, that's the Realistic Minimus 7 bookshelf speaker. Cleaned up, recapped, and ready to play, they're now the smallest speakers that I have shown so far on the channel. Take that, me from 9 months ago. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully I'll see you for the next episode. I found a Yamaha thing. So I'll see you again soon. Keep thrifting and stay metal.